He thought my login was a key to brilliance. He didn't know I'd already changed the locks. Tomorrow, in front of our biggest client, he'll present what he believes is genius strategy. What he doesn't know is that every slide, every chart, every number will collapse under the first real question. And I'll be right there, in the front row, watching his world implode. My name is Emma Clark. I'm 34 years old, senior data strategist at one of the largest consulting firms in New York. For 7 years, I've been the quiet architect behind projects that brought millions to the company. My colleagues call me reliable. My performance reviews praise my attention to detail. But the same line appears every year. Emma needs to work on her executive presence. That's corporate code for, she does the work, but we can't picture her leading. I know what invisibility feels like. I've watched junior analysts present my models to the board. I've seen managers repackage my insights with their name on the slide deck. I've stayed in the office past midnight fixing disasters no one else could solve, only to watch someone else smile for the credit. The truth is, I learned long ago, when you're invisible, you see everything. That's how I saw him. Liam Foster, 28 years old, business school graduate, expensive suit, expensive watch, and the arrogant calm of someone who has never been told no. He had one qualification that outshined all others. He was the CEO's only son. And in a firm like ours, that was more powerful than a PhD, more valuable than a decade of experience. When Liam joined, it wasn't through HR. It was at a Monday morning meeting when our CEO announced him with pride. My son will be taking a leadership role in our most critical accounts. He represents the future of the company. The future. That word stung, because I knew what it meant. The future was Liam in the spotlight, and me in the shadows, quietly making sure his spotlight didn't collapse. Our biggest client this year was Crestmont Industries, a $50 million engagement to rebuild their retail data infrastructure. The kind of project that defines careers, the kind of client you cannot afford to lose. Naturally, I expected to be buried in the back end as usual, doing the heavy lifting while Liam smiled for the cameras. And I was right. From his first day, Liam was a hurricane. He didn't ask. He demanded, "Emma, send me the quarterly churn analysis. Emma, I need the revenue projections by noon." "No, please, no thank you. Just assumption." And when he forwarded my reports, my name vanished. His signature appeared at the bottom. At first, I bit my tongue. I'd played this game before. But then he crossed a line. It was a Thursday afternoon, nearly 5 p.m., when Liam walked into my office without knocking. He leaned against the doorframe like he owned the place. "I need your login credentials for the Crestmont folder," he said. Not asked. Said. I paused. "Those are my working files, Liam. They're not ready for client use." He waved a hand as if brushing away a fly. "I just need some visuals for a deck I'm pulling together. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Send me the password." And just like that, he left. Expensive cologne lingering in the air. I sat there staring at my screen, 7 years of being overlooked flooding my chest. How many times had I been told I wasn't leadership material, while watching leaders like Liam, who couldn't explain a single formula, take credit for my work? Something inside me shifted that day. Not rage. Rage burns too quickly. This was colder, sharper. Calculation. I opened a new folder. Crestmont Final, EC. My initials at the end, subtle enough to be ignored. Inside, I began crafting a different kind of deliverable. Not lies. No, that would be too obvious. Instead, I built analyses that looked flawless at a glance, but were catastrophically wrong under scrutiny. A retention model with inverted formulas. A revenue projection based on outdated exchange rates. A segmentation strategy pulled from demographics. Crestmont hadn't targeted in a decade. Beautiful to the eye. Fatal in reality. Then I saved the real versions, clean, correct, airtight, into a separate, secured folder, complete with documentation trails and timestamps. If Liam wanted my login, I'd give it. And I'd give him exactly what he deserved. When the email arrived, "Send me your credentials ASAP." My reply was short. Here you go. The files you need are in Crestmont Final. E.C. Send. The trap was set. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Liam present my poisoned files in internal meetings, bragging about the insights he'd developed. His voice steady, his smile unwavering. I stayed quiet, nodding in support, documenting every misstep. Each claim he made bound him tighter to the lies. Each compliment he received from executives made his eventual fall heavier. Tomorrow, he will walk into Cressman's boardroom wearing his $3,000 suit and his father's confidence. He will project my corrupted files on a screen worth more than my car. And he will promise the impossible. And me? I'll be sitting in the front row, my leather folder on my lap, containing every real analysis, every timestamp, every piece of evidence. Waiting. The beauty of a trap is that the victim springs it themselves. The morning after I handed over my login, the entire office seemed to orbit around Liam. He walked through the halls like he was born to own them. Handshakes, easy smiles, the kind of polished confidence that money buys and upbringing reinforces. People leaned in when he spoke, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, nodded at insights that weren't his. I watched from the sidelines, unnoticed as always. That was my gift, really. Being invisible means you can study people in ways they can't study you. And what I saw in Liam was not brilliance, but bravado. He knew the language of leadership, big words, polished gestures, but not the substance beneath. The first test came a week later in a team meeting. Liam presented my retention model, one of the poisoned files I'd planted. On the screen, charts glowed in corporate blues and greens, arrows pointing upward. He cleared his throat, voice carrying with authority. Our analysis shows a dramatic shift in customer behavior. Retention rates appear far lower than expected, meaning Crestmont has urgent opportunities to re-engage their premium clients. I almost smiled. That single sentence contained a time bomb. Across the table, Sarah from Analytics frowned. Are you sure about that? I thought retention had been improving, not dropping. Liam gave her a smile that could have been rehearsed in a mirror. Sometimes data forces us to challenge our assumptions. That's why Crestmont hired us, to bring in fresh perspectives. The room nodded. No one pushed further. Not yet. But I logged the moment. 10:42 a.m., Thursday, January 12th. Screenshot saved. Each day, Liam pulled deeper from the poisoned well. He forwarded client emails my way with a one-line instruction. Handle this. He stripped my name from models, slapped his initials on presentations, and passed them off as original thought. He was building a tower of lies, brick by brick, and he never noticed the foundation was already cracking. Still, I wasn't reckless. I built my insurance carefully. The real models sat in my secured folders, version histories intact. Every dummy file bore my digital fingerprints. Creation dates, embedded initials, metadata tags that couldn't be erased without leaving evidence. Each time Liam accessed my fake folders, my little script logged the event: date, time, IP address. He was unknowingly writing his own confession with every keystroke. 2 weeks before the client presentation, I overheard him in the break room boasting to 2 junior analysts. Honestly, this project is a breeze. I've already developed new models that will blow Crestmont's executives away. They've never seen analysis this sharp. The juniors nodded eagerly, hungry to be in his orbit. I poured my coffee in silence, invisible as usual. But inside, I was ice. Let him brag. The louder the boast, the harder the fall. The truth was, Crestmont's executives weren't fools. Margaret Hale, their CFO, was known for shredding consultants who showed up unprepared. I'd seen her in action once. Calm, polite, but deadly precise. She spotted an error in a competitor's projection in under 2 minutes and spent the rest of the meeting peeling back their assumptions until nothing was left. And that was the beauty of my trap. All it would take was one sharp question, one moment of scrutiny, and Liam's masterpiece would collapse into nonsense. He'd claim 40% growth in the dead of winter, recommend stocking summer apparel in December, argue that retirees were the prime demographic for a brand built on Gen Z trends. Impossible claims, fatal mistakes. But I wasn't naive. I knew Liam wasn't just some arrogant rookie. He was the CEO's son. Even when he failed, there would be an instinct to protect him. That's why my evidence needed to be bulletproof. Not whispers, not suspicions, but facts. Timestamps, logs, screenshots. A chain of proof so irrefutable that even family ties couldn't deny it. One late evening, as I organized my documentation, Marcus, the CEO and Liam's father, passed by my office. He paused at the door, surprised to see me still there. "Working late again, Emma?" I forced a polite smile. "Just making sure the Crestmont data is clean." He nodded approvingly. "That's why I trust you with the details. Not everyone has your discipline." Then he walked away, never guessing that his own son's fate was sealed in the very files glowing on my screen. By the third week, the tension in the office was tangible. Liam strutted with more confidence than ever, telling anyone who'd listen that Crestmont would double their investment once they saw his insights. Meanwhile, Sarah whispered to me privately, "Some of those numbers look strange. Are you sure they're right?" I gave her the same calm smile I gave everyone. "Trust the process. Everything will make sense soon." Inside, my anticipation grew. For 7 years, I had been the ghost in the machine, the woman no one remembered in promotions, the name left off the slides. But in 4 days, in a glass conference room overlooking the city, I would finally step into the light. And Liam? He would discover what happens when you try to steal from someone invisible. Because invisibility, I'd learned, isn't weakness. It's a weapon. The Friday before the Crestmont presentation, I arrived earlier than usual. The office was quiet, just the hum of servers and the faint whir of the cleaning staff's vacuum on another floor. I liked it that way. Silence gave me clarity. I poured myself coffee and opened the secured folder on my laptop. The real analysis glowed on my screen. Clean models, logical forecasts, projections grounded in reality. 8% growth in Q3, 5% in Q4. Manageable challenges, real opportunities, the kind of work that could stand up to scrutiny anywhere. Then, with one click, I opened the other folder. The poisoned one. Charts with inverted formulas, projections in the wrong currency, demographic targeting pulled from outdated years. Beautiful to the untrained eye, catastrophic to anyone who actually understood Crestmont's business. And those were the files Liam had been parading as his own brilliance for the past month. My little script confirmed it again. 27 separate logins from Liam, each download neatly logged. He'd even renamed the files, stripping away my initials, stamping his into the headers. The arrogance was breathtaking. That morning, HR sent out an internal email. Reminder, Crestmont presentation Monday at 9 a.m. Sharp, dress code, business formal. All hands and support roles should be prepared. In support roles. That's what I'd been for 7 years. The person in the corner, silent, fixing disasters while others got applause. But Monday would be different. Monday, I wouldn't just be in support. I spent most of the day preparing my portfolio. Every chart, every real model printed and bound in a leather folder. Timestamps, metadata, screenshots of Slack messages, even version histories. Not dramatic accusations, just facts laid out clearly, step by step. My insurance policy. By mid-afternoon, Liam strutted into my office without knocking. He leaned against the doorframe, grinning like a politician. "Big day Monday. You'll be there, right? In case they throw technical questions." His tone wasn't a request, it was an order. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied evenly. "Good." He straightened his tie and flashed that practice smile. "Not that I'll need backup. The work speaks for itself." I almost laughed. Yes, it did. That weekend, I tried to relax, but the anticipation gnawed at me. I walked around the city, sat in cafes, pretended to read. But my mind kept circling back to Crestmont's boardroom, to the moment when impossible numbers would be projected on a 12-foot screen. Sunday night, my phone buzzed with an unexpected email from Marcus, our CEO. Emma, please bring supporting documentation to tomorrow's meeting. Liam mentioned you've been keeping the technical backups. I stared at the message for a long time. Of course. Liam was already building his escape route. If things went south, he'd try to redirect blame. Say I'd given him faulty numbers or claim I'd failed to clarify. He thought he was clever, lining up a scapegoat. But scapegoats don't usually carry portfolios of evidence. I typed my reply. Of course. I'll bring everything. That night, I laid out my charcoal suit, polished my shoes, and placed the portfolio by the door. Inside, 2 stories waited. One false, one true. By 9 a.m. tomorrow, only one would survive. Monday morning, the lobby was buzzing. Consultants in sharp suits clustered in small groups, rehearsing sound bites, double-checking slides. Liam arrived like he owned the building. Expensive suit, perfect hair, that easy grin. People flocked to him, eager to be in his orbit. I walked past unnoticed, my leather folder under my arm. That was fine. Being invisible had always been my strength. We rode the elevator together to the top floor. Liam chatted with another manager about reshaping retail landscapes and innovative growth levers. Buzzwords polished to perfection. I stayed silent, focused on the floor numbers ticking upward. The Crestmont boardroom was everything I expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline, a table that could seat 20, screens larger than my living room wall. One by one, executives filed in. Margaret Hale, the CFO, with her sharp eyes and sharper questions. James Donovan, the CEO, calm and composed, the kind of leader who'd built an empire from nothing. Marcus and 2 other partners took seats along the wall. Liam sat up at the front, clicking through his slides, confident, radiant. I chose my spot deliberately. Front row, directly across from Margaret Hale. I placed my folder on the table, closed but within reach. As Liam opened the meeting with his polished introduction, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The pieces were in place. The trap was ready. All I had to do now was wait. Liam opened with confidence so polished it almost squeaked. Company overview, market trends, slides that said everything and nothing. The room eased into a rhythm. Heads nodding, pens tapping, the ritual of corporate theater. Then he advanced to the first critical slide. Revenue projections. A neat line shot up in Q4 like a rocket. 40+% growth. In December, in the Northeast. Across from me, Margaret Hale lifted her eyes from the screen to Liam, then back again. Can you walk me through the assumptions behind that Q4 acceleration? Her tone was neutral, precise. Liam didn't miss a beat. We've identified underpenetrated winter segments. With targeted promotions and optimized inventory mix, we believe Crestmont can unlock outsized seasonal demand. Optimized? How? Margaret asked. No edge, just the knife laid flat on the table. We'll shift assortment to align with the new segments, Liam said. Increase heat in categories with the highest elasticity. It sounded like English. It wasn't saying anything. James Donovan, Crestmont's CEO, leaned forward. James, he said, we have 32 winters of data. We've never beaten Q3 in Q4, not once. Liam clicked again to segmentation. A tidy cluster plot labeled Primary Growth 55 to 70. Retirees is the engine of a brand built on athleisure and downtown pop-ups. Margaret's eyebrow lifted. You're suggesting our growth is driven by retirees? Emerging opportunity, Liam said. A neglected cohort with high lifetime value. Margaret glanced at her tablet, then back at the slide. Our revenue is 76% 25 to 34. That's not a belief. That's our internal data for the last 3 years. A thinning silence settled. Pens stopped tapping. Liam's smile strained but held. Sometimes internal views lag the market. We're challenging assumptions. He advanced to inventory optimization. A colorful calendar grid pulsed on the screen. The caption, Winter Mix Shift, Outerwear/Resort. It took 2 seconds for the room temperature to drop. James folded his hands. Are you advising we cut outerwear in December and expand resort? Based on projected footfall from travel-adjacent locations, yes, Liam said. Underexploited adjacency. Margaret didn't look up. Projected from which locations? Composite of Midwest and Northeast stores. Then why is the seasonal coefficient tagged Sunbelt 14? She asked, still reading. Because that's a Sunbelt coefficient. A ripple passed around the table. Even Liam's confidence flickered. That's a label artifact. The math is sound. Margaret lifted her gaze. Is it? She tapped her screen. Because your Q4 revenue sheet references FXUSDAUD at 0.74 in the conversion helper. We're a US retailer. Why are you converting Australian dollars? Liam blinked. We standardized currency to maintain... To maintain what? James asked, mild as snow. We sell coats in Chicago, not cairns. Someone near the end of the table coughed, the kind of cough that tries to bury a laugh. Liam's hand tightened on the clicker. He moved to churn. My inverted formula gleamed in corporate blue. Premium retention at 18%. Industry devastating. Margaret didn't even ask. Our last monthly cohort shows 82% retention for premium. This says 18. You're off by a factor of 4.5. New cohort definition, Liam said. We're using a stricter window to expose the leak. It's inverted, Margaret answered. Your denominator is wrong. A G 247 points to loss, labeled as keep her eyes flicked up, steady. Who built this? Team effort, Liam said smoothly. I led methodology. My folder felt suddenly heavy in my lap. I didn't move. I didn't need to. The room was doing the work. Mr. Foster, James said, voice soft enough to make everyone lean in. Do you understand our business? Silence. Liam opened his mouth, then closed it again. His father, Marcus, shifted on his chair along the wall, face unreadable. James looked past Liam, to me. Emma, is there anything you want to add? Every head turned. The old reflex, to minimize, to stay small, flashed and died. I set my folder on the table, stood, and held up an HDMI cable. May I? I asked. James nodded. Liam stepped aside, stiff as a mannequin. I connected my laptop. The screen changed. Gone were the impossible spikes. In their place, a modest 8% in Q3, tapering to 5 in Q4, with confidence intervals and notes that matched Crestmont's reality. This projection accounts for 32 winters of historicals, I said. My voice surprised me. Calm, even. Footfall declines 59 to 63% after October across your Midwest locations. Any model showing Q4 outpacing Q3 is misspecified or mixing geographies. Margaret was already nodding. That aligns with our view. I clicked to segmentation. Primary revenue is 25 to 34, 76% last year, rising to 78 this quarter. The earlier analysis used 2014 segmentation logic. Crestmont repositioned in 2019, I advanced to inventory. Outerwear is correctly weighted for December through February. The resort lift in the other deck came from Sunbelt coefficients mistakenly applied to Midwest stores. A label artifact would not redirect a formula. The range reference was wrong. No one interrupted. The room felt closer now, as if the table had quietly tightened around the truth. I moved to retention. Premium retention is 82%. The other file inverted the calculation. AG 247 points to the loss flag. Here's the corrected sheet, with audit trail. Margaret's pen hovered, then dropped. Thank you. I stopped. I hadn't mentioned Liam. I hadn't needed to. The numbers were their own witness. James tapped his finger once on the table. One question, he said to me. How did we get shown that? He angled his head toward the frozen image of Liam's slide. Instead of this? I opened the folder, Pages lay in crisp order: version histories, timestamps, access logs. "These are the preliminary drafts I keep for internal stress testing," I said. "Marked not for distribution. They were accessed, renamed, and presented as final." I slid one page forward. "You'll see the metadata change on the distributed deck. The label preliminary was removed." Liam spoke quickly, too quickly. "Emma supplied the wrong numbers. I asked for the final file and she—" "The access log shows 43 downloads from my prelim directory in 4 weeks," I said, keeping my voice level. "Each occurred after I flagged the final versions in our secured path." I didn't look at him. I looked at James. "The client deserves accurate work. This," I tapped my screen, "is accurate." Silence again, the decisive kind. James stood. "We'll take 10 minutes," he said. "Emma, please stay. Everyone else, give us the room." Chairs slid, paper rustled. Liam didn't move at first. Then he did, jaw set, eyes everywhere but mine. Marcus followed him out, a fraction too slowly. The door closed. The room felt larger. Margaret exhaled. "Emma," she said quietly, "can you deliver the analysis you just showed us under our timeline?" "Yes," I said, "with authority to choose the team. Direct access to your data. Clear sign-off protocols." James nodded once. "Good." Outside the glass, I could see Liam on the phone, pacing, one hand to his temple. For years, I'd been invisible in rooms like this. Now the room was looking back at me. The 10 minutes hadn't passed yet. But the tide had. The 10 minutes stretched into 7. The door opened. James and Margaret returned first, faces composed. Marcus came in behind them, the careful neutrality of a man balancing 2 loyalties. Liam followed last, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the middle distance. James resumed his seat and folded his hands. "Thank you for your patience," he said. "We're continuing with the engagement under one condition. Emma leads it. Effective now." He turned to me. "Authority to pick the team, direct access to our data, and a weekly checkpoint with me and Margaret. Can you accept that?" "Yes," I said. "I'll need a clean handoff today and a working session with your finance and operations leads by Wednesday." "Done," Margaret said. Liam cleared his throat. "With respect, this change midstream will confuse the client. The original methodology—" James didn't raise his voice. "Mr. Foster, you won't be speaking for us going forward." He looked to Marcus. "I assume your firm will manage its internal process." Marcus's nod was small, controlled. "We will." The rest of the meeting was all pragmatism. Dates, deliverables, data access. I walked them through the corrected roadmap. Rebuild the churn model with transparent cohort logic, fix the geography mix in the footfall forecasts, retune inventory coefficients by climate band, establish a sign-off gate so preliminary files could never masquerade as final. No buzzwords, no theater, just work. When we broke, Margaret lingered. "I don't reward drama," she said quietly. "I reward clarity. Bring me clean numbers and people who can explain them." "You'll have both," I said. In the hallway, Marcus stopped me. Up close, he looked older than he had an hour ago. "Did you plan this?" he asked. "I plan to protect the client and my work," I said. The files Liam used were marked preliminary. I documented everything because I've learned that's the only way to be heard. He studied me a beat, then exhaled. "We'll need a formal statement for our internal review. You'll have it by end of day." Back at the office, HR called me into a glass room and turned on the recorder. I stuck to facts: dates, folders, version histories. No adjectives, no speculating about intent. When they asked if I wanted to file a complaint, I said this: "My only request is process. Clear ownership, audit trails, and consequences when those are ignored." They nodded and ended the recording. Liam didn't come back to the floor that afternoon. An email later announced he was on leave. No details. Offices are good at euphemisms. I assembled my team before the day was out. Sarah from analytics, because she asked the right questions. Daniel from ops, because he knew the store systems better than anyone. And Priya, a junior who'd been quietly fixing other people's SQL for a year. In our first stand-up, I laid out ground rules. Everything in version control, every assumption documented, no slides without model notes, no one presents alone. Heads nodded, relief visible. We opened the Crestmont repo and started over. The next weeks were a blur of clean work. Daily syncs with Crestmont's finance and ops. A cohort retention model that anyone could audit in 5 minutes. A seasonality framework that separated climate from calendar. A modest forecast, 6 to 8% growth in Q3, 4 to 5% in Q4, tied to levers Crestmont actually controlled. We piloted a staffing optimization at 6 stores and watched checkout times drop without overtime. When we recommended shifting outerwear buy windows by 2 weeks in the Midwest, the warehouses stopped choking in January. We didn't promise miracles. We delivered improvements. By quarter close, the numbers came in. Crestmont landed at 6.8% growth in Q3, 4.9% in Q4, within the band we'd projected. Inventory carry cost fell by $1.8 million over 2 months. Margaret sent a 3-sentence note to our firm. Thank you for the transparency. Thank you for the rigor. Keep going. I printed it and slid it into my folder behind the access logs. Both mattered. The internal part resolved quieter. Liam resigned. To pursue new opportunities. The announcement was 3 lines long. Weeks later, he sent me an email that started with defensiveness and ended with apology. I read it twice, then archived it. I wasn't interested in being his lesson. I was interested in not repeating mine. Marcus called me into his office on a rainy Tuesday. No small talk. You're leading Crestmont permanently, he said. And I want you to build a data integrity program across accounts. Title upgrade, budget, headcount. Present a plan next week. I'll do it if the rules are explicit, I said. Ownership, review gates, and real consequences when they're ignored. Otherwise, we're just changing titles. He smiled, tired but genuine. Write the rules, Emma. I walked back to my desk past the kombucha taps and the aspirational posters and thought about how quiet fights change companies. Not speeches, not takedowns. Process. Proof. People who will do the work when the stage lights are off. I didn't set out to ruin someone. I set out to protect a client and reclaim my name. The trap only existed because someone kept helping themselves to what wasn't theirs. If there's a message in any of this, it's not be ruthless. It's simpler. Document everything. Guard your work and let the truth do the heavy lifting. Competence doesn't shout. It accumulates. I still stay late sometimes. The office hums the way it did before dawn on that Friday when I checked both folders and chose which story would survive Monday. Only now, when I leave, I stop by a different office. Mine, with a door and a window and a team chart taped to the wall. Before I shut down for the night, I write 1 line at the top of the next brief. Assumptions we can defend. It's not flashy. It holds. The champagne had barely stopped fizzing in the plastic cups when Don, my manager, cornered me in the hallway. He still had frosting on his tie from the lopsided cake someone from HR bought at Costco. Everyone else was laughing, hugging, posting selfies with the banner that said "Historic Launch" in Comic Sans. I was still in the afterglow of watching my system survive its first real stress test. Clean dashboards, 0 downtime, smooth as silk. Then Don ruined it. No bonus for you this year. Policy reasons. He said like it was nothing. Like he was telling me the coffee machine was out of filters. Then he clapped me on the shoulder, grinning as if I should thank him for the slap. For a moment, the air went flat. My ears filled with static, like when you drive through a tunnel. I blinked at him, waiting for the punchline, the grin that meant he was kidding. but he'd already pulled out his phone, already scrolling through something more important than the woman who had just saved his career. I nodded once. No anger. No questions. Just a clean, flat got it. But inside, something clicked. Not rage. Not yet. Something colder. The kind of cold that comes when you realize someone thinks you're disposable. 30 minutes later, I was at my desk, the noise of celebration still buzzing faintly from the break room. I opened my encrypted folder, the one I never told anyone about. A digital drawer of insurance, old emails, Slack threads, design diagrams, and at the very bottom, the contract, the analytics license. I highlighted the clause I'd fought to insert 2 years ago. Appendix C, subsection 4, paragraph B. A single sentence, dense with legal muscle. In the event that the designated technical lead, as defined in Addendum A, Kate Morrison, is removed from compensated employment status for any period exceeding 72 hours, this license agreement shall be considered null and void, with all associated access rights terminated without notice. I could almost hear my own voice from that negotiation. Me on the phone with the vendor, begging, pushing, refusing to back down until they added it. Don had been absent, of course. He'd pawned off the contract review on me because, in his words, legalese makes my head hurt. I made sure my name was there, not out of arrogance, but survival. I knew people like him. The moment you stopped being useful, you stopped being human. And now here we were. I didn't run to HR. I didn't confront Don. That's not how you win. Instead, I opened a new email. Short, professional, no anger between the lines. Just 4 words in the subject line. FYI, potential issue. In the body, I wrote, looping you in on the analytics license, specifically Appendix C. There may be compliance implications tied to compensation structure. Attaching for your review, attach the PDF. Original signature. Time-stamped. No dramatics, no bold text, no threats. Let the document do the talking. By the time the email left my outbox, I felt the shift. Not outside yet. The office was still full of sugar highs and corporate backpatting, but inside me. The ground was tilting, the fuse already lit. I leaned back in my chair, pretending to scroll through JIRA tickets when I saw her. Rebecca, lead counsel. She was crossing the hallway with a folder under her arm, phone in her hand, scanning her inbox as she walked. She stopped mid-step, froze. Her eyes darted back to the screen. She scrolled again. Then she slowed, pressing her thumb against the folder like she needed to anchor herself to the floor. She set the folder down on a cubicle wall, adjusted her glasses, and stared at Don's office door. Her face had gone pale, tight. When she finally pushed his door open, I caught a fragment of her voice. Not loud, not panicked, just sharp, surgical. Please tell me you paid her? The laughter in the hallway didn't stop. HR was still buzzing about karaoke night. Sales was still high-fiving over fake numbers, but in that tiny office, I knew the ground had shifted. Don's voice fumbled something about policy and upper-level decisions. Rebecca didn't answer. She closed the door instead. The sound was small, but it echoed in my chest like a gunshot. I turned back to my monitor, pulse steady. No smile, no gloating. Just the faint satisfaction of knowing the grenade I'd buried 2 years ago was finally ticking in their hands. They thought withholding my bonus was just a cost-saving measure. A box ticked on a spreadsheet. They didn't realize they'd just turned off the oxygen valve on the system that fed their entire company. And I was the only one who remembered where the switch was. The office looked the same the next morning. Cheap carpet, humming fluorescent lights, the smell of burned coffee drifting from the kitchen. But something had shifted. Silence had settled over the floor. Not the kind that comes from focus, but the kind that spreads in waves. Conversations dropped the moment I walked past. Slack notifications slowed to nothing. Calendar invites vanished without explanation. First, the daily stand-up disappeared. One moment it was on my calendar. The next, it was gone. Then, my access to the DevOps channel blinked out, replaced with a red banner. You no longer have access to this workspace. I didn't ask questions, didn't protest. I opened my terminal, sipped my tea, and started exporting logs. By mid-morning, whispers began. Kevin, one of the engineers, leaned against my desk with a forced smile. Hey, random question. Did anyone actually confirm the vendor clauses with legal? Something in appendix? Whatever? I shrugged. Not sure. Why? He frowned, scratching his neck. Heard Rebecca's been digging. Looked serious, that didn't surprise me. I still remembered the way she froze yesterday, whispering, "Please tell me you paid her?" She'd recognized it immediately. The clause wasn't some minor footnote. It was a live wire, and she knew it. The rest of the team tried to keep the mood going. Sales was still high-fiving over inflated numbers. HR joked about karaoke night. But beneath it, nerves were showing. Don strutted down the halls, talking louder than usual, his fake laugh echoing off the walls. Every sentence was stuffed with confidence that didn't quite stick. I watched from the break room later, staring at the sad remains of the launch cake. The word winners was scrawled across it in red icing, the last S sagging into crumbs. Appropriate, I thought. That afternoon, Rebecca called a meeting. No subject line, no prep doc, just quiet shoulder taps pulling people into conference room C. I wasn't invited, but I could see through the glass. She sat at the head of the table, calm, deliberate. Don was across from her, face flushed, spinning a pen between his fingers like a nervous tick. HR chewed gum like a teenager. A junior analyst looked like he'd rather vanish through the floor. Even from a distance, I could see what was on Rebecca's laptop screen. The license. The clause. The exact one I had highlighted in my email. At one point, she leaned forward, speaking low, sharp. Her eyes locked on Don like she was pinning him to the wall. He tried to laugh, shrugged too quickly, gestured like it was all nothing. Rebecca didn't blink. When the meeting ended, Don stormed out first, jaw tight, barking into his headset. HR followed, chewing faster now. Rebecca lingered a moment, typing quickly before closing her laptop with quiet finality. She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. By the end of the day, the isolation had escalated. My JIRA tickets were reassigned. Access to the monitoring dashboards revoked. Piece by piece, they were erasing me from the very system I had built. I opened a fresh spreadsheet and began cataloging every dependency. Daily sales dashboards powered by my pipeline. Customer churn reports tied to my scripts. Forecasting models for the CFO, built from my code. Transformations scheduled with cron jobs I'd written during a blizzard while Don stayed home working remotely. Line after line, I mapped the company's heartbeat. By the time I stopped, dozens of systems filled the page. Each one linked to me. Each one hinging on that license. Each one vulnerable. I encrypted the file, stored it on an offline drive. Not revenge, insurance. When I finally left, the building felt hollow. The laughter from yesterday had vanished, replaced by the uneasy quiet of people sensing something was wrong but too afraid to name it. As I stepped into the cool night air, I felt steady, calm. They thought I was cornered, cut off, erased. But every step they took to push me aside only tightened the rope around their own necks. And when it snapped, they'd realize too late. I was the only one who knew how to keep the oxygen flowing. The first sign wasn't a siren. It was an absence. The report that always lands in the CFO's inbox didn't arrive. No bounce, no error, just silence where numbers should be. A junior analyst pinged a channel I no longer saw. Are the dashboards down or am I doing something wrong? The kind of question that sounds innocent until 5 more people ask it in different rooms. Then the ping stacked. Product couldn't load churn. Sales couldn't refresh pipeline. Marketing screenshots showed empty tiles where KPIS used to be. DevOps swore there were no overnight deploys, no alarms. Everything looked fine, which is its own kind of problem. I sat at my desk and watched it build like pressure in a pipe. An email slid into my inbox from Rebecca, short and surgical, CCing a handful of people who sign things. Confirm current compensation alignment for designated technical lead per Appendix C to maintain license compliance. No exclamation points. No threat. Just a scalpel laid on a tray. Don replied with a paragraph of foam. He used words like policy, timing, and review window. All air, no weight. Rebecca followed with a copy of the signature page and one sentence. Non-compensated status triggers termination of license access. You could feel the temperature drop without seeing a single face. Across the floor, I heard chairs slide, doors close. The quiet kind of panic that keeps its shoes on. On my screen, I opened the vendor portal and did what anyone with a pulse and a plan does. Checked logs. The last authorized handshake matched my system's heartbeat. Then a string of denials. Token rejected, license context invalid. Not a glitch. A judgment. I poured myself coffee in the break room and watched the hallway. People walked faster, carrying laptops like life preservers. Someone from marketing stared at a frozen dashboard for a long time, like if she willed hard enough the numbers would return out of pity. A message arrived from an address no one ever notices until it matters. Vendor compliance at ... It said exactly what I expected it to say. Plain, unadorned, impossible to argue with. License status: non-compliant per Appendix C. Access suspended pending remediation by designated account lead. The designated account lead was me. I didn't reply. That wasn't my job anymore. Across the glass, conference room C filled again. No invite for me, as usual. I could read the room anyway. CFO, arms folded, face gray. VP of sales rubbing his temples. HR flipping to the wrong page, then back again. Rebecca at the head, calm as a winter lake, the contract open like scripture. Don tried to speak with the shoulders, all shrug and bravado. He was performing confidence for an audience that had stopped buying tickets. They put a printout on the table. My architecture diagram, branding swapped. My notes rephrased in the third person like the system had grown on a tree. I recognized my own mistakes from 2 years ago, now framed as triumphs by people who had once asked me what a warehouse was. The irony would have been funny if I were in the mood. The door opened. The CEO stepped in with the expression of someone who walked into a room expecting cake and found an audit. He didn't sit right away. He looked at Rebecca. Rebecca didn't blink. She pointed at a highlighted line, said something measured. He asked a question with his hands. She answered with her eyes. You learn a lot about an organization when lawyers stop choosing adjectives. Outside the room, the floor was losing air. People stopped making small talk. Phones rang and didn't get answered. A director jogged to IT like jogging could fix contract law. I went back to my desk and made myself useful to the only person who would thank me for it later. Future me. I exported dependency maps, rebuilt notes that lived in my head into a shape that would survive without me. Every cron, every feed, every alert path. I deleted my personal test keys from sandboxes I no longer trusted to stay private. Not sabotage, housekeeping. Someone from HR drifted near my desk with a smile he'd probably practiced. Quick favor, could you jot down some transition notes? Just so the team can keep momentum. The word you use when you're sure the car still has gas because it's still rolling downhill. I looked up. Happy to, once legal confirms our license is valid. He blinked. The smile didn't know where to go, so it fell. He left with a nod that meant nothing. Another email from Rebecca landed, this one to a wider group. Crisp final. Retroactive adjustments do not resolve breach. Disclosure preparation has begun. A whole building inhaled and forgot how to exhale. Soon after, the banners appeared, an elegant red strip across executive dashboards. License unrecognized. Contact account holder. They could fire me if they wanted. They just couldn't run the company after they did. That's the part people like Dawn never learn until the lights go out. Value isn't loud. It's the hum you stop hearing until it's gone. The CEO left the conference room without speaking to anyone. Rebecca followed, face set. Don came out last, colorless. He avoided my eyes, which was a shame because I was ready to give him the gift he'd been dodging all week. The truth fixed in the calm of my stare. I packed my bag like it was any other day. Laptop, charger, the offline drive with my notes. My plants could wait. Plants know how to survive droughts. At the elevator, I caught a reflection I recognized from 2 years ago, the night I'd convinced a skeptical vendor rep to type my name into a clause that wasn't standard. Not vanity, insurance. There are rooms where the only way to be seen later is to write yourself into the rules today. The doors slid open. I stepped in, breathed, and let the day close. Halfway to the lobby, my phone lit up. Unknown number. No caller ID mask. No assistant buffer. The kind of call that skips every rung on the ladder because the ground underneath it just moved. I let it ring once more, long enough to hear the buildings hum in my ear. Then I answered. The voice on the other end was rough, stripped of the polish you hear in all hands meetings. Kate. The CEO said. Just my name, like it was suddenly fragile. We need to talk. I leaned against the counter in my apartment, one hand resting on the cat curled on the windowsill. About what? I asked, calm, like I didn't already know. The system, he said. No spin, no smile. Just the word that now defined his nightmare. It's down. The vendor says it's a licensing issue. Rebecca tells me you're critical. Critical. The word sat in the air between us. What will it take to resolve this? He asked. No greeting, no apology. Just desperation wrapped in a necktie. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch, piano wire thin. In the distance, traffic hummed through the city. Inside, I sipped water, steady as stone. I already flagged the issue, I said finally. 30 minutes after Don told me I wasn't getting my bonus. He exhaled like a man caught holding a live grenade. Look, that was a mistake. A misunderstanding. We'll fix it. Just tell me what you need. I almost laughed, but didn't. Not yet. Instead, I walked to my desk and opened the folder I'd named They're Going to Beg. Inside sat a PDF my attorney and I had prepared weeks ago. We'd drafted it as insurance, knowing the launch would test more than just servers. The title was simple: Reinstatement and Buyout Proposal. I'll send you something, I said. Read it carefully. You'll have 24 hours silence. Then the sound of a pen tapping against wood. Kate, we don't have 24 hours. Investors are already asking questions. The board wants answers by morning. Then you'd better move quickly, I said, and hung up. I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. What I felt was the weight of control sliding back into my hands, quiet and solid. The next morning, the building had the energy of a funeral home. Slack channels were graveyards of unanswered questions. Phones rang without pickup. Teams huddled in corners, whispering words like breach and exposure. Marketing sent an all-staff email blaming IT. IT blamed the vendor. The vendor responded with a single brutal line. Your license is invalid due to breach. Contact your designated account lead for reinstatement. The designated account lead was me. Rebecca didn't waste time with blame. She sent a message to the executive team. Retroactive compensation does not resolve breach. Vendor has confirmed. Disclosure to board and investors mandatory. No fluff, no soft edges. Just a scalpel cutting through denial. I sat at my desk, calm, while HR made their move. A junior staffer, Tyler, barely out of school, approached holding a paper form like it might explode. He was sweating through his shirt. Don was wondering if maybe you could draft some transition notes? Transition notes? I repeated. Yeah, just so the team can keep things moving. His voice cracked mid-sentence. I set my tea down, met his eyes, and said evenly, Tyler, I can't document a system you no longer have legal access to. His mouth opened, then closed. He nodded too quickly, mumbled something about checking back later, and scurried off. They thought they could fix this with paperwork. A backdated bonus, a quiet form slipped into payroll, like compliance could be tricked with timestamps. But Rebecca caught it before the ink dried. She sent another email, this one company-wide. Payment logs confirm violation. Retroactive adjustments do not restore compliance. Platform remains unlicensed. That line, remains unlicensed, spread through the building like smoke. By afternoon, I walked past conference room B and saw them inside. Dawn pacing, voice raised. The CFO pale, head in hands. Someone from sales with tears in her eyes, clutching a granola bar she wasn't eating. Rebecca at the end of the table, calm as ever, binder open, pen clicking softly like a metronome counting down the seconds. I didn't slow down. Didn't look in. I just kept walking, my bag heavy with the offline drive that held every dependency map, every log, every piece of evidence. Insurance. Always insurance. When I got home that night, the offer came through. An email from the CEO. Subject line. Proposed resolution. Attached was their counter, a promise of the withheld bonus, a note of appreciation, vague assurances about future recognition. I read it once, twice, then closed the file. Too little, too late. I opened my prepared proposal, attached it to a new message, and forwarded it back. 3 bullet points, simple and clear. Immediate wire transfer of unpaid compensation plus 40% breach penalty. Buyout of license clause for a mid-6-figure sum executed through outside counsel. Written statement acknowledging contribution to be read at the next all hands. I added one sentence beneath it. Offer window, 24 hours. Then I hit send. I sat back, poured myself a glass of wine, and let the silence settle around me. Outside, the city buzzed with life. Inside, my plants leaned toward the window, untouched by the chaos consuming the people who thought I didn't matter. They had made their move. Now it was my turn. The offer window sat in their inbox like a countdown. I didn't pace. I watered my plants, answered a message from a friend about weekend plans, and fed the cat. The dashboard stayed dark. The building lived on forwarded emails and wishful thinking. The reply came sooner than I expected. First, a counter, the kind that tests whether you're bluffing. Half the breach penalty. No buyout. A future spotlight at some vague town hall. I wrote one sentence back. Per attached, terms are non-negotiable. Then I closed my laptop and made dinner. A second message arrived, this time from Rebecca, not the CEO. No flattery, no apology. Please confirm wiring instructions. Attached was a short amendment drafted by outside counsel to execute the clause buyout upon receipt of funds. I sent the wire details and the PDF my attorney had pre-cleared. If they moved quickly, the system could breathe again without pretending I didn't exist. Payment confirmation landed first. A screenshot from Treasury, numbers that actually mattered. A few minutes later, the ACH notice from my bank. Not a promise. Money. I felt it more as a weight lifting than a victory. The breach penalty followed. Same day. No dithering. They had finally found the brake pedal. Rebecca called. Funds sent, amendment circulating. Vendor is ready to reinstate upon confirmation that you're in compensated status, she said, voice even. Translation. We paid you. Please let the lungs fill. I'll notify compliance, I said. I opened the vendor portal, attached the executed proof of compensation with the timestamp, and replied to the compliance address that had shut the door. Status restored. Amendment pending. Please reinstate access per Section 7DA, short pause, then the response. License recognized. Services resuming. No confetti, no fanfare, just the hum returning to a building that had forgotten what it sounded like. Only then did the CEO call again. He skipped posture. We should have paid you the bonus, he said, quiet, like someone admitting the obvious too late. I flagged it before the launch, I said. You had time. He didn't argue. We'll honor your proposal in full. The statement at the all hands. Would you prefer to read it or have me read it? The question hung there like a bridge I no longer needed. You can read it, I said. It's your house. The all hands happened the next morning. No music, no jokes. People looked tired, like the blackout had sucked color out of their faces. I watched from the back, arms crossed, the room a blur of hoodies and blazers. The CEO read the statement as drafted, word for word. He acknowledged the design, the implementation, the nights and weekends, the contract I negotiated, and the breach they caused by withholding compensation. No hedging, no team effort air quotes. My name was said out loud, attached to the work it belonged to. The room clapped in a way that wasn't a party. It sounded more like relief. Don didn't look at me. He stared at the floor, jaw locked. Later, I saw a calendar hold block out his afternoon with HR. That part wasn't my business. After the meeting, engineers stopped by my desk one by one. Not performative. Quiet thanks, a nod, a hand to a heart. Kevin said, I learned more from watching how you handled this than any code review. I believed him. Rebecca visited last. She leaned on the cubicle wall, the same way she had leaned on the claws. I don't say this often, she said, but you saved them from themselves. I saved my work, I said. They just happened to use it. She nodded, almost a smile. The buyout amendment is fully executed. Going forward, the license isn't tied to you. If you choose to leave, you won't be holding a grenade on the way out. That's the point, I said. No hostages. I had already decided. Staying would mean pretending the previous week hadn't happened. Respect isn't a plaque. It's trust you don't have to beg for. I drafted my resignation with a short transition plan. 2 weeks, documented handoffs, a list of risks that didn't need to become disasters if someone actually read them. No drama. I didn't want to burn the place down. I wanted to close the door and know it would stay closed. When I sent the note, the CEO replied within minutes. Appreciation, an offer of a consulting retainer if I ever wanted it, more words than I needed. I accepted the thanks, declined the retainer, and attached the final dependency map with notes in plain English. Insurance for them, closure for me. On my last day, the dashboards were alive, the hum steady. A new engineer shadowed me through the final handoff. We clicked through systems, I answered questions, and when we were done, I unplugged my keyboard and put it in my bag. I left the plants on the window ledge. The team had started watering them on their own. Good sign. Outside, the air felt clean. I walked to the corner cafe and ordered a coffee I didn't need. My phone buzzed. An email from the vendor confirming the clause buyout had been recorded and the account now sat in ordinary status. No special protections, no tripwires. Just a normal contract for a system that would keep breathing without me. I sat by the window and let the quiet settle. Not triumph, not vengeance, just equilibrium. If there's a message in all this, it's simple. Build well, document better, and write yourself into the places where memory gets fuzzy. Contracts, change logs, signatures. Don't threaten. Don't bluff. Say what you'll do and do it. Protect your work without breaking what other people rely on. The system doesn't have to go dark for you to be seen, but sometimes darkness is the only language a careless room understands. They learn to read it. I learned to leave. And the hum, at last, belonged to both of us for exactly what it was.